If you know that feeling where you hold back what you want to say or don't say what you're feeling to try and keep the peace, and then eventually there comes a moment where you can't hold it in anymore and you snap, and you're left there afterwards thinking, I can't do this anymore. If that feeling sounds true to you, then I want to talk to you for a minute. Because a lot of us don't start out wanting to snap. In fact, it's normally the opposite. We hold things in so that other people can stay calm and happy, even if it costs us in the moment. A lot of people will assume that when you snap, it's because someone's pushed you too far, but it's not. What's normally happening is you've been holding too much in. Things you want to say, things you don't agree with, whatever it might be, and you hold it in and you can't go back to those conversations and have them again. So then you're left with whatever you didn't say. And more often than not, nobody else notices that, because all they ever see is you're silent about it, right? And that might be a good thing. The silence might be taken as agreement. We don't know, but eventually that builds up, and when you react, that's your body like letting off the steam, right? Lowering what you're carrying, taking away some of that weight. So it's not that you have failed or that you're weak or that you've let yourself down. It's the same with anybody. If you try and hold too much in with no way of letting it out, eventually it has to go somewhere. Because for most of us, when we snap, it's because we spent too long trying to avoid arguments, or even saying things that we're worried might start an argument. But nobody can do it forever. It's the straw on the camel's back analogy, isn't it, really? The straw that breaks the camel's back isn't the heaviest. It's just the one that was one time too many. So even though a lot of us start off with the best intentions, like I say, because it has nowhere to go, it works for a while, holding it all in, until the day it doesn't. And then comes quite a really difficult part of this process. When you're the one holding everything in and you do finally snap, what you've been doing by holding it in is you've been trying to make other people feel better in that moment, or make it easier for other people in that moment. Then when you snap, it feels like you've undone all that good work, and the only thing left for you to do then is get irritated at yourself. Because, like I say, it starts with good intentions. You don't mean to upset people. That's why you're holding everything in. And eventually, when you do snap, what happens is that you're not just holding in everything you didn't say before, even though you just snapped about something else. You're holding everything you didn't say before, right? And then you're also now holding all the feelings you have about snapping, like being angry with yourself. You might even be annoyed at the other person. It's whatever it is. All of that gets added in as well, right? And then you're carrying all of that around with you. And over time, again, the straw will break the camel's back. You will, we snap again, and then more gets added and more gets added. And over time, that time between reactions, between people snapping in certain moments, those times just get shorter and shorter, because every time it happens, you're carrying more and more and more and more. And it gets to a point where you do sit there and think, because I've had this, you sit there and you think, I can't do this. And you can't see your way out of it. Like, you're trying your very, very best, and your very, very best isn't working. And that's not something that means there's anything wrong with you, because there's not. It's a difficult place to be, because you're trying to do the best you can for the people around you. And sometimes you succeed, you do really well for a bit. Other times it's a bit harder. But if there was a way that you could keep things to yourself without snapping, would you take it? I know I would have done. Here's another question I want to ask you. If you knew somebody you cared about or someone you loved was doing the same thing, holding everything in. Yeah, not letting anything out, whether it's a sibling or your partner or someone you work with or one of your parents, whatever it might be. If you saw them doing that too, and then they snapped, and they came to you and said, "I'm failed, I can't do it," would you say the same things to them that you say to yourself? Because sometimes it's not about just staying calm overnight. Sometimes it's just about stopping long enough to think something as simple as, would I judge somebody else for doing what I do? If they snapped as well, would I be angry with them? Would I be irritated with them? And I think it's a fair question, because for me personally, I can think of a great example of somebody in my life who does this as well. And I wouldn't be angry with them. Because when you're not the person, when you're looking at someone else doing it, and you see the toll it takes on them, it makes you appreciate that it takes a toll on anybody that does this. So it's not about just staying calm all the time, because nobody is. Nobody is calm all the time. And if anyone tells you they are, I'd wager they're lying to you. Not because they're a bad person, but because nobody's calm all the time. It just doesn't happen, you know? But if you are struggling with something that seems familiar to this, I want to tell you a story that happened to me, I would say probably a couple of years ago now. I was at my parents' house, I was in the kitchen at their house, I was talking to my dad, and I was saying to him, like, I can't do this. Like, I try, yeah, I don't say anything to wind anybody up, I'm a good boy about that, right? I keep it all to myself. But no one else does that, right? And everyone expects me to be calm. And I try and be calm, and I try and be calm, and I try and eventually I can't take it anymore. And then it doesn't matter what it is. It could be something small, something big. It could be my partner, it could be my kids, it could be one of you, my parents, it could be anybody. And eventually, after long enough, I just can't take it anymore, and I snap at somebody. And I was describing that loop, that endless cycle, with nowhere to go and no way out of it. And the thing that I was most afraid of in that moment wasn't the next time I'd snap. Not directly. It wasn't the effect it was having on me. Not even close. It was the biggest fear was that one day the people I cared about would get fed up with it. They would get fed up with me. And then even though I've been trying all this time to do the best I could for all of them, I'd wake up one day without any of them because they couldn't handle putting up with me anymore. And eventually it led to a moment where I was at home where I am now. I went outside in my car. And I remember sitting there thinking, like, I can't keep going on like this. Something has to change. And normally when I would have moments like that, all I would hear in my head was just everything I'd done wrong in the last week, month, day, hour, whatever it was, just playing over in my head. So I put on a song and I just listened to that just once. And the song that I listened to, because there was no other noise, it was the only thing I could hear. But because I was listening to that, all of the stuff that playing around in my head just sort of stopped while the song was on. And the song finished, and there was just silence in the car. And I remember sitting there in that silence, just not thinking anything, not thinking of anything, not thinking about what I'd done, not thinking about what I can do better, not thinking about what I can do differently, just nothing. I think it was like 1 or 2 minutes. And I realised that actually I needed those 1 or 2 minutes. Because then when I got back out of the car again, I noticed the effect of just sitting for 1 or 2 minutes in silence, or listening to that song, and then the 1 or 2 minutes. I felt the breath again. I felt myself breathing again, which sounds weird, but like when you're stressed and you're like put out all the time, and you're constantly tense, and you're always on edge, like you don't notice the little things. You don't notice something that a version of you 6 months ago would have found funny. You don't notice something that you might have found sweet or endearing before, because the more of this you do, the snapping, the holding it in, the snapping again, it's like the light that it's like everything around you just sort of, you disconnect from it and you see it. You know, you still see what happens around you, but you kind of stop feeling as much as you did. Even the little things. But what I felt when I got back out of that car was I took a deep breath, right? And this is not like, oh, deep breathing is what helped. But I took a deep breath, right? And I felt the air. As I was breathing in, I felt it going down my throat. It was freezing cold. It was slightly raining, but I felt the rain on my face and the cold air in my throat. And it felt like breathing properly for the first time in months. And as soon as that happened once, that feeling of just being a little bit better for a little, and it was like 30 seconds. 35 seconds I felt better for. Second, I was back in the house and my kids were arguing, and it was back to just being wound up again. But now I'd had those 35 seconds of like feeling slightly better, I wanted that again. And you don't have to do the same thing. There doesn't have to be one process for everybody. There's only one method that everybody uses. A lot of the stuff that I'd seen before that was all what I would call thinking yourself better. And that's no disrespect, but it didn't work for me. Because a lot of these things, when you look at it, it's like controlling your anger, controlling your emotions, being calmer. There's no, like, for me personally, there was no being one, like being irritable, being snapping, and then just being calm. That didn't happen. Something needed to exist here in the way, right, so I could get over to being calm properly. I wasn't able to just do it on my own without anything. But after I'd taken that first pause in the car and I felt the difference, I wanted more of it. I wanted that feeling again. So then I started looking for times where I could have that feeling without taking away from anybody else. Like I wouldn't just walk out of the house in the middle of the day or like walk out of work. It'd be like if I was on my lunch break at work, if I could get to my car, I'd go and sit in my car for 5 minutes. Same thing again. Play a bit of music, have 2 or 3 minutes of silence. And every time it happened, that same feeling of like breathing properly again, actually breathing properly, just kept coming back. And the more it kept coming back, the more that feeling was there, the more moments I could find to take it in. There was a moment that happened not too long after that. I think we're talking a few weeks after this. I noticed for the first time, and I dread to think how long, that I actually realised this was happening. But something happened, and I can tell you now with confidence that if I'd been like on the edge of snapping when this had happened, I would have snapped. Hands down, no questions asked, absolutely would have happened. But I managed to stay calm. Not perfect. Not like these Instagram parents you see where they're like, you know, kind and nurturing and it wasn't like that. I just didn't snap. And for me, it was like, without realizing it, I'd gone from snapping pretty much constantly at one point to be able to stay calm one time by just taking these little pauses. And again, your pauses don't have to be the same, but trying to stay calm without a way of containing it keeps you in that loop. And it's a loop that you don't get out of until, one, you see it for what it is, and two, you find that bridge across. For me personally, that's what it was like for me. And if it's anything like that for you, then first of all, I want you to know you're not alone, because I was there myself. And there's times now where I struggle. I get like it now, where I try and hold everything in. So there's times where I struggle with it still. So you're not alone with it. You're definitely not broken. Like, there's nothing wrong with you for being like it, because a lot of people do this, and a lot of people do it more than they realize. Yeah, as well, because some people do it, don't realize they're doing it, don't understand the cycle. They don't see it, they just carry on with it. So if you're in that cycle now, or you've been in it recently, or you think you might be in it, I want to tell you that, again, you're not alone with that. It's actually a really common thing to be in. You're not broken for being in that, and you're not a bad person for snapping. If the reason you snap because you're holding too much in, it's whatever happens, you're trying to do the right thing. And that's something a lot of us don't give ourselves enough credit for. Trying to do the right thing. If anything in this video has helped you, or if you want to try and take like a little pause for yourself, I absolutely encourage you. And whether you are ready to do that, whether you are not sure where to start, whether you're at the other side of it, wherever you are in it, I want you to know, and I mean this genuinely, I am rooting for you every step of the way. Because when I did this finding this bridge across, I did it on my own. And I was alone in that moment because I didn't talk to anybody about it. And I had no one, because of that, to talk to me about it. And I'm not a therapist. I'm not a doctor. I don't have any qualifications. What I have is lived experience. I've done it myself. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't easy. It definitely wasn't ever straightforward. But I didn't have anybody rooting for me, anyone in my corner. And I want you to know that I am in your corner. So if you want to reach out about anything in the video, anything that came up, any thoughts or feelings you might have about it, drop it in the comments if you want to. I'll respond to every one of them. But if you have had a moment recently where you've thought, I can't do it, or I can't do this anymore, you might be closer to finding a way out of that loop than you realise.